right, I feel like it doesn't need to be expressed by me right now how much of a joke Tim Pool is, okay? I've covered him quite a few times. He's not exactly, unknown in this space. You guys have all probably seen takedown videos on him. You all probably know that he is a massive hack, and that the fact that he is one of the most influential political figures on the internet is a travesty and evidence that God is not real. That right there. When I see that Tim Pool is one of the largest, most influential political figures on the internet, it's one of those moments where I'm like, oh yeah, no, God couldn't be real in a world like that. Nah, there's no way. He wouldn't let this happen. Helps reinforce my atheism, if you ask me. In all seriousness, though, putting the bit aside, Tim Pool's a hack. All right, the guy's career has basically been elevated by the fact that he is able to fearmonger and spread conspiracy theories, hang out with conspiracy theorists, some of the likes like Alex Jones and whatnot, tote the same exact rhetoric, and yet he still does the classic like 2016 Sargon moderate liberal defense. He says he's like a centrist, or classical liberal is what he called himself. Tim Pool calls himself like a centrist or like a center left-leaning guy. He completely lies about his political beliefs, or at the very least lies about the beliefs that he shills for. Meanwhile, spreading massive amounts of misinformation. If you've ever seen the guy like interview someone on one of his shows, I gotta say, I would probably never go on his show. Not unless it was like an over the internet thing, because every time I watch someone go on there, they're never able to like fact check. They never have like a laptop or like a computer or something in front of them where they can quickly fact check the lies that Tim Pool tells, because if you ever go to Tim Pool's channel, here we can do that right now actually. Look at this motherfucker. Holy shit. Hundreds of thousands of views per day on his channel, per video. You'll notice something special about the type of content he uploads is that he is constantly covering stories, no doubt very twisted and lied about, that support his narrative, right? That's all he does. That's more or less what he does, at least. I'm sure he does other stuff. He brings people on and whatnot. But his bread and butter is this live coverage, these snippets. Not too dissimilar to what I do, frankly. The thing is, his whole thing is about lying about the events of stories that have happened. Guests don't use phones, whereas Tim and his lackeys have computers they're always looking at. Lamau, yes, exactly, of course, Vermin. And it is disrespectful to have like a computer in front of you there. So even if Tim Pool abstained from using a computer, and as did his guests, he would still have this one up in that his content is centered around filling up a roster of misrepresented or completely made up stories that he can use as anecdotes to support narratives about broader trends. Because of course, these giant conservative demagogues, they don't have data, facts, consensus, anything like that on their side. All they have are individual stories, individual anecdotes they can point to that make people feel very emotional about a specific issue, and that's all they really have. All conservatives have to these issues is emotion. And if they can find these individual stories that make people upset or make people sad or make people happy, these are what they need to convince people, because it's all just emotion. There's no thought or reality or logic put into their ideology whatsoever. I'm gonna put myself up here. I like it better. Anyway, yeah, guy makes a shit ton of money. A lot of people watch his content. He's a complete hack. We've covered this before. Anyway, he also hates women, though that shouldn't have been a surprise in the first place. Didn't he do a video, by the way, that was about how, like, feminism is ruining women and that's why he can't get a girlfriend? I'm pretty sure he did, like, a whole 40-minute to 50-minute long segment or more about how, like, leftism and like feminism is why he can't get a girlfriend and he can't get laid. Pretty hilarious stuff. So, of course, he does hate women. Shouldn't surprise you. Democrats call for revolution after Supreme Court of the United States, Roe v. Wade ruling. Supreme Court Chief Justice orders investigation. All right, let's go ahead and watch the video. You know what I'm going to do because Tim Pool is very monotonous and boring? By the way, something that always impresses me, or I guess not so much as it impresses me, more so makes me jealous, I guess. It's a mix of jealousy and hatred. It's almost like, God, they have it so easy, but oh, I hate that it is that easy for them. But like, Tim Pool isn't a very charismatic guy. Maybe you guys disagree, but and I'm even saying I'm the most charismatic guy, okay? I just recently found myself capable of watching my own content, my more new content, and not cringing at it. But, you know, coming from me, I don't see any charisma in Tim Pool's presentation. There's not much to it that excites me. There are like I would rather watch a Jake Paul video right now on stream with you guys than this Tim Pool video, because I know the Jake Paul video will be more entertaining. At the very least, Jake Paul is like loud and rambunctious and talks quickly and has like some level of sort of like a character that he's playing, you know? Tim Pool is just very droning and boring. But I guess the fact that this guy's made it to become this big tells me that it doesn't matter how charismatic you are, you can make it on this platform.
From SCOTUS blog, it's impossible to overstate the earthquake this will cause inside the court in terms of the destruction of trust among the justices and staff. This leak is the gravest, most unforgivable sin. The leaking of the initial draft in the Roe v. Wade ruling is a first in history. The institutions are crumbling. Many on the left are cheering this on. They're out.
Wait, are you serious? Pro-freedom patriot Tim Pool is not only in favor, it would seem, of Roe v. Wade being repealed, because of course he is, because he's a conservative, not a centrist moderate or whatever he claims to be. He's a conservative demagogue. He's got his demographic that he shills to. He has to pay for I shit you not, he lives in a bunker that has an underground. He lives in like a compound, okay? It's got like an above ground area, from my understanding. This is how I've heard it described. There's like an above ground area. It's like a normal compound. And then beneath the ground is like a basement bunker that has, I'm sure, plenty of amenities. But what I remember most specifically is the underground skating rink, like skateboard and roller skating rink, he has in his bunker. That is how much money Tim Pool makes. Now, if you're ever looking to wonder about, like, which side politically is the most lacking in integrity, and which side should I trust the most, which side do you think is pursuing the money the most, you should probably look to the side whose largest demagogues have literal underground, like, skating rinks. Say what you want about Hassan, okay? Say what you want about Hassan. He may like his stupid $1,500 Hawaiian shirts and his trips to Coachella and whatnot, but like, and he did buy a pretty expensive house, but he bought a house in West Hollywood. It's going to be expensive. I mean, it's, as far as mansions in Hollywood go, it's not the craziest I've ever seen. I mean, Captain Sparkles, I'm pretty sure, I think it was Captain Sparkles. No. Notch outbid Jay-Z and Beyonce, but Captain Sparkles got his mansion is extraordinary. If you've ever seen the pictures of Captain Sparkles' mansion, Notch's mansion is obviously insane. I don't know, like, Hassan's place isn't that crazy, and he doesn't have an underground fortress or bunker in his house, right? Like, these conservative figures are making way more money. They're being funded by corporations that have way more money behind them than any content creator on the... Like, listen, okay? The people that are funding Tim Pool, the literal pool of money that is funding Tim Pool at this point is so much larger than any independent content creator like Hassan could ever be making, all right? Hassan is not making underground bunker money. Maybe in 10 years he'll have made that type of money. Tim Pool's only been making this level of money and been at this level of prominence for roughly the amount of time Hassan's even been online as a figure of notability. So you have to consider the fact that Tim Pool is making way more money than even Hassan. And he's paying a staff, he's paying an entire team, he's like associated, I'm pretty sure, with like the Blaze or some Is he not? Does timcast.com or Timcast, whatever his company is called, not have some affiliation with the Blaze or Fox? Or I'm sure it does on some level. Like, this guy is raking in the dough. I mean, I am convinced that Tim Pool's a grifter. I've heard people that have met him. I think even Vosh said that he doesn't think Tim Pool's a grifter. I don't know. Maybe I'd feel different if I met the guy and just, like, in private talk to him about politics, and he just really was as stupid as he is in his videos in person when there's no audience there. Maybe that would change my mind, but not impressed by him at all.
Outright calling for revolution. I wish I was exaggerating. They're actually saying, let's burn this place down. Or, it's time for a revolution. Or, so you say you want a revolution? Well, have one right here, right now.
All right. Tim Pool, as much as I would love for these blue check mark, I guess because we humans use Twitter dark mode, subhumans use Twitter light mode. But because humans use Twitter light mode, they're actually white check marks, or sorry, Twitter dark mode. They're actually white check marks, not blue check marks. I don't think these blue checkmark liberals are actually going to do any revolution. And I'm going to take a wild guess and say that their hyperbolic tweets are probably calling for metaphorical revolution more so than literal, like, pitchforks and torches revolution. You see, people on the left are not exactly generally as prone to violence and you know, the type of behavior the right likes to engage in, you know, like getting together and starting a big riot or insurrection. Not a thing the left likes to do. The worst we've ever seen like that from the left, honestly, was were the occasional riots after Trump got elected, and they weren't even that bad. Like, some trash cans got lit on fire. There were a couple of broken storefront windows, I think. Besides that, there wasn't much more damage. And it was for like 2 days. Listen, what Tim Pool's going to do here is lie to you and try to convince you that there is this epidemic of blue checkmark liberals calling for literal violent revolution, and isn't that hypocritical? You liberals have been calling for DOJ investigations on anybody involved in the Capitol riots on January 6th for the last 2 years. Very curious how now all of a sudden you're the ones calling for revolution. Like, come on. There's no actual epidemic here. There is no real threat of left-wing people staging a violent insurrection of any kind. The most that you're going to see, just like we have seen from progressives for a very long time, are going to be protests in DC. I know there's a protest happening in LA right now. I'm sure there's a protest happening, maybe not right now, but sometime soon in my town, around here in like Palm Springs and in the Coachella Valley. There's going to be protests, and a lot of people are hopefully going to vote harder. You're probably not going to see a lot of violence. You know who does like to get violent, though? Conservatives. They're the ones who like to stage terrorists. They're not stage. When I say stage, it almost sounds like they're faking it, but you know, plan and carry out literal terrorist attacks at abortion clinics. This has been a big problem before. I remember recently I saw, I say recently, this is actually like 4 years ago. I saw this story that actually was like, it's pretty dope. Where these like old military veteran guys, like old fucking dudes, had sort of like lined up outside of an abortion clinic, or Planned Parenthood. I'd say abortion clinic. Planned Parenthoods do a lot more than that. A lot more. I'm pretty sure like Planned Parenthood really doesn't do that many abortions. Like, I've seen like the pie chart data of like how much of their resources goes to a given service or whatever, and they don't like abortion's like a very small slice on their pie chart. Like, most of it is like providing Plan B, providing like general like Planned Parenthood will literally like help carry out pregnancies. A lot of their resources go to helping mothers and those carrying children carry out pregnancies. Like that's a thing they do as well and spend a lot of resources on. Anyway, Regardless, though, there's this big mob of conservative Christians outside of a Planned Parenthood, screaming and attacking and harassing any women that were going in for any reason. I mean, like, I'm sure plenty of those women weren't even pregnant and they weren't even going in for abortions or anything. But of course, there's these conservatives out front trying to harass them, trying to keep them from going in. And so which has always been an epidemic and a big problem for abortion clinics. Like there's always been problems with like conservatives going outside and trying to stand on the curb to harass people going in and convince them to not get an abortion or not take the services. They're very ghoulish people, right? And they'll claim that this is their freedom of speech, but what they're doing is harassing people. You would never stand outside of a donut shop to like warn, I don't know, like you'd never to warn people not to eat a donut because donuts are unhealthy. I don't know, like clearly there's an ideological thing here. If people were doing that, guarantee, 100% guarantee, all right, if somebody stands out front of a donut shop and like yells at people, hey, like even if it's from like the curb, and is like standing out there with a sign and starts yelling at people like, you're killing yourself, donuts are unhealthy, don't eat that shit, the cops will be pulling them away very quickly. But if the cops pull away someone protesting at an abortion clinic or at a Planned Parenthood or whatever, now all of a sudden it hits headlines and this person's free speech has been taken away, when in reality their ability to harass somebody trying to seek medical assistance has been taken away. Conservatives are creators of their own mental prisons. They are the architects of their own oppression. The things they think that keep them down just doesn't exist. And when it does exist, they completely misattribute the problems. I'm stun locking very hard. I'm complaining about conservatives way too much. The funny thing to me, though, is that Tim Pool is more upset about the leak happening. He's mad about it leaking. Pro-freedom journalist Tim Pool is mad about the document leaking, a document that is a leak on a massive decision being made by the highest court in the land on one of the most fundamental rights on human bodily autonomy being discussed, despite the fact that most Americans either don't care about it or are in favor of it in this country. I like how Tim Pool is now mad about the leak. Do you want to know why he's mad about the leak? Because he's in favor of the repealing of Roe v. Wade. And if something like the Say Gay bill, I don't know, had been leaked or something like that, if there was like some bill passing through the Supreme Court that they were going to vote on, and there'd already been like a draft put out that they were going to vote yes on it, and this bill would mandate gender affirming surgery for transgender people, regardless of their age, as long as they're above 18 or whatever. Like, if that was what leaked, Tim Pool would not give a shit about the leak, and he would be harping on the Supreme Court. Now, of course, that's a ridiculous scenario that I just used as an example, but obviously, Tim Pool does not care about how secure our system is. The system is failing, it's crumbling. No. The reason why this is leaked is because even people within our government recognize this motion, a motion that has been made most likely due to the 3 conservative Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump picked and was able to put in place in the Supreme Court, despite the fact that Obama wasn't only able to put in 1 Supreme Court justice, even though he should have been able to put in 2. He got blocked. Very flawed system we have when it comes to the highest court in the land deciding some of the most fundamental rights we have as citizens of the land of the free and the home of the brave, or whatever it is.
I have long stated that I believed abortion may be an issue not unlike slavery as a catalyst for a coming civil war. We're probably in...
Oh, God, there's so much to talk about with Tim Pool. So, Tim Pool is the political equivalent, the online political equivalent of a doomsday preacher. This is a phenomenon that's very well known about, so let me just prove to you guys that I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. Oh, there's a MAGA church that has doomsday preachers. Harold Camping, doomsday preacher, dies at 92. Well, he didn't reach it. Anyway, there's no like general explanation of what a doomsday preacher is that comes up on Google, but like if you look up doomsday preacher, you'll see plenty of examples. Essentially, doomsday preachers are usually Christian fundamentalist like preachers who tell their flock and their followers that the end of the world is coming, and they'll almost always say it's coming on blank date. And the way that they'll explain how they know it's coming on that date will be really ridiculous. It'll be plenty of shows, movies, skits, etc. have made fun of the way that they try to prove it. It's like, well, if you count these stars in the sky and then add those together with pi and then divide that by 666, then you get this number, and that's the month. And then if you add that to Jesus's name, which is GJES, US, that's 5 letters, so that's the minus that. Like, they'll do that to try to claim this is when the date is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen. We're still here after all, as far as I know. You know, maybe the world did end in 2012 and we've just been in hell the whole time since then. It doesn't happen, and then they just move the calendar ahead. They just say it'll happen, you know, a little further ahead. They move the calendar ahead, just like how Tim Pool said Trump was going to win big red wave in 2020. Didn't happen. He was wrong. Now there is going to be a big red wave in 2022 this year in the midterms, but I've been saying that for a year now. So I mean, Tim Pool's just been saying constantly whatever his audience wants to hear, and when he's wrong, it doesn't matter. He'll just push the time frame up ahead. He's been predicting this Great Reset or a civil war for years now. He's been doing this for longer than I've been on YouTube making content for you guys. He's been predicting this civil war, this Great Reset, whatever you want to call it.
A civil war, but don't take it from me. Take it from the author of The Next Civil War, Stephen Marsh, who goes on to explain, recently, mind you, Supreme Court's coming abortion ruling may spark a new era of U.S. unrest. Now, Stephen doesn't go as far as to say it will be an outright civil war because of abortion.
Let me tell you guys something. You know what this is actually going to do? And I do agree with this particular article in part. I personally knew when I was a teenager, like when I was like when you think Zoomer now, even though I count as Zoomer, even though I'm 22, when you think Zoomer, when you think like teenager, when I was a teenager, like a few years ago, most people that I knew rarely thought about politics. But where their political stances essentially was essentially whoever is trying to take away their freedoms the least is who they'll support. And for a long time, the right has had a very successful go of it, convincing the world that the left are this evil boogeyman, the cancel culture, SJW. This boogeyman has gone by many names, many names, from the SJW to the cancel culture to whatever, that the left wants to take away your freedoms, usually centered around freedom of speech. They've also had the gun issue for a while. While in the meantime, the right would sort of kind of sneakily, actually through policy, do the thing they're accusing the left of doing, and it usually works for a while. The problem is, the right, I think, has overplayed their hand here. While there's a very, very low likelihood of the Supreme Court being any more left-leaning anytime soon, remember, the Supreme Court justices either leave when they step down, leave when they get impeached, which has happened once ever back in the early 1800s. They're not going to get impeached, or once they die. So we're going to be stuck with a conservative majority Supreme Court for a while, and there's no telling what kind of things they could be repealing in the future. While accidents do happen, and it's worth having a Democrat in office as much as possible, so in case a Supreme Court justice steps down, dies, or gets impeached, then a Democrat's in power to put a new liberal Supreme Court justice in place, hopefully. That's not what's happened right now. For those that are complaining about, like, oh, well, how'd voting save us from this? Vote harder. Vote more. Learn how the Supreme Court works. Okay? These justices are appointed by the president. Yes, there are loopholes and whatnot put in place to prevent, to allow conservatives to play dirty and have a bit of a minority rule, so to say, and, you know, kind of prevent a liberal court justice from getting put in place, as they did with Obama. But don't care. You got to vote anyway. It's the only way you're going to affect significant real change. So vote. Vote blue no matter who.
Abortion. But I think that issue may actually be a strong catalyst, just like we saw so long ago. In his article, which we'll go through in more detail, he mentions how in April 1861, Confederate forces shot on Fort Sumter. But at the time, even Jefferson Davis, the Confederate president, had doubts about whether the event mattered all that much, saying either the beginning of a fearful war or the end of a political contest. It's hard to know exactly how these actions we have seen over the past 24 hours will reverberate. Past 24 hours, I should say, past several years. But right now,
I was saying, I know a lot of people who are like pretty young, don't know a lot about politics. Their political opinions are basically going against whoever is taking freedoms away from people. I think the rights overplayed their hand here. I think this whole repealing abortion thing is going to have like a really negative effect on them. Abortion for conservatives has always been a losing issue. I'm sorry. Abortion has always been a losing issue for the right. There has always been winning issues for the right and left and losing issues for the right and left. For the left, the losing issue is guns. If the American left wants to win, they have to stop going after guns. If they did that, they'd get way more votes. For the right, the losing issue for them is abortion. If the right wants to win more, they need to stop going as hard on abortion. There's also other winning and losing issues for these two parties and these two sides politically, but abortion's never been a strong suit of the right. When you start taking away the rights to bodily autonomy while also saying that you're the ones in favor of freedom and bodily autonomy, it tells people you're hypocritical. It tells people that you're old-fashioned. It tells people that you're willing to take away people's rights and privileges. People don't like that. This new modern-day conservative power structure that's taking away rights from people is very reminiscent of that old TradCon geezer tier 2008 and before Republican era that we knew about and used to make fun of and parody and joke about back before Trump came along. Seems like the right's kind of regressing into that again. And it's like a fracture in the party, too, because, of course, you have your more Trumpy MAGA types, you know, your Marjorie Taylor Greenes and your Lauren Boeberts and your Madison Cawthorns and so on. But then, of course, you also have your more traditional conservatives like Mitt Romney. And I assume the justices appointed by Trump are not traditional conservative by any means. But you know what I mean. We're starting to see more of a fracture in the right. It's interesting.
Conspiracy theories are rampant. Who leaked this opinion? Already barricades were up at the Supreme Court building. This was because of a man who self-immolated over climate change. But already people had protest signs pre-made. They knew.
Okay, dude. Setting yourself on fire to protest climate change is fine, all right? You can't shit talk anyone who does that, all right? Burning yourself to death in protest is the most metal shit in the world, okay? There should be like a rock somewhere. There should be a rock somewhere that is guarded 24/7 and guarded from erosion that has the names of every single person who's ever burned themselves to death in protest on it for eternity, because that might be the most baller thing ever. Have you ever burned your hand on accident while cooking before? Just a little burn on your hand while cooking? That shit makes me want to cut my whole hand off. It hurts so bad. Even if you dunk your hand in ice, the pain sticks around for a while. Now, I want you to imagine your flesh is actually on fire and you are burning to death from the outside in, okay? Because you don't just die instantly once the flames have taken you over. Burning to death includes your eyeballs exploding like grapes. You're still alive for this, by the way. And the fire and the heat still has to cook you deep enough to cook your vital organs and your brain to death. You're still alive for a hot minute. A literal hot minute. The hottest minute. Self-immolation is a hell of a way to die, and that motherfucker has my respect.
This was coming in some form or another. Now on the left, there are arguments that it was actually the conservative justices who leaked this to force other conservative justices to fall in line. The idea there is that now that the leak is out, any change, any deviation from this ruling overturning Roe and Casey would imply that public pressure got to the justices and influenced the court, and thus Their credibility is completely undermined. And as the Supreme Court, the judicial branch itself, has no real enforcement options, the only thing they have is their credibility.
Jesus Christ, that's very, very stupid. This like idea that Supreme Court justices are unbiased is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Of course they are biased. There is a reason why they're appointed by the president and why people want to make sure that a certain president is part of a certain party is in power when a Supreme Court justice needs to be replaced. They're literally the ones who make decisions about like some of the most fundamental rights we have as Americans. Whether or not they are biased is very relevant. They are biased. It does inform their decisions. And not to mention, the beliefs of the people should affect their decisions at times. This is one of those things where it's like it feels sort of like a win-lose situation, right? You know what I mean? If you make it so that the Supreme Court justices are always, taking their cues from the popular demand of the people, that means that most likely, most of the time, the rights of most people are going to be upheld. Believe it or not, even right now, I don't think it would be popular here in America to have the Supreme Court pass a super discriminatory law on a federal level that, restricts the rights of trans people. I don't even think that would be popular here in America. Regardless, though, it also brings up the question of what if it does become popular? What if you don't want popular opinion to be what's able to change whether or not a group of people are able to have rights or not? It's sort of a win-lose situation, right? However, let's not exist in a fairy tale fantasy world that doesn't exist, where we think that the Supreme Court justices aren't motivated by bias.
Regardless, their credibility is basically gone. The institution has been gutted by this move. Now, following these accusations or theories from left, they're saying, who cares?
Really?
Who cares about the institution? They're taking away women's rights. We're going back to the 1950s. However, on the right, the theory is that it was a clerk for Sotomayor who has long talked about breaking the rules and pushing back, who is a source for one of these journalists, I believe the journalist who actually published the initial draft. And so it may be that the left leaked the documents to incite some kind of reaction that would terrify the conservatives and force them to change their opinion. Because even in this confirmation...
Well, that's a pretty interesting wording of what I think probably happened. I think this is probably leaked by a progressive person who had access to it, because a Supreme Court ruling on the rights of an entire demographic of people, and that kind of stuff is going to get leaked because the government's about to do a bad thing. I'm sorry, Tim Pool, are you not in favor of leaks and whistleblowers? So when the government's about to do a potentially bad thing, the people know they're about to do a bad thing? Or, Tim Pool, are you a hack who has to please your audience, and so you will say whatever makes the right and the conservative Supreme Court justices that are currently, sitting right now, look as good as possible because you know it's what your audience wants to hear, and it's what'll keep them coming back for more of your content, more of the pig slop you pour into their trough every day.
Chief Justice Roberts is saying that it's not official. It's just an initial draft. Some even argue it was Justice Roberts himself who leaked this document, trying to gauge where the public will be because he wants to be on.
By the way, this is how upset Tim Pool is about blue check marks maybe engaging in rhetoric that could be like revolutionary. And there's not a word of condemnation from Tim Pool when you had like Trump and Trump like staffers, Trump cabinet members, and Trump like lackeys or whatever, not only encouraging but like prodding on the January 6th insurrection. Not a word from Tim Pool about that. Not a word of condemnation from Tim Pool about that. But the possibility that these blue check marks on Twitter, God knows who they are with their 200 fucking likes on their tweets, could be calling for revolution. This is what, entails his attention.
On the right side of history. It was funny because the other day when this news came out, I was like, I bet John Roberts was on the side of maintaining Roe v. Wade because he's not really conservative. Now, the left argues that most people in this country want to see Roe upheld. And that is, I would say, technically true. Well, literally true. Most polls show us that majority.
Well, most people, my understanding is that most people don't really care enough about the issue to be against abortion. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm not really strongly against it or whatever. Maybe they're in favor of abortion being allowed up till some point. Maybe there's very few people are outright against it. And the repealing of Roe v. Wade would lead to the facilitation of, potentially in many states, the outright banning of abortion. I've realized something about conservatives that I feel like we should start to point out more. I think it's really, really important. So conservatives care about states' rights. Specifically, they care about the rights of the state. The rights of the state to enforce their ideology, and of course, when they're in control of it, it also allows them to maintain their business, interests. We've obviously seen this in Florida, right, where these big companies will work with the government of Florida, the Republicans running it, in order to make sure that there's, right now, I grew up in Florida, so this is what I know best. I'm sure this is a problem all over the country, but in Florida, I've watched throughout my childhood as the lobbying of Republicans that have run the state, I should say, have ruined the environment of that state. Entire wildlife preserves and areas that used to be fishable and swimmable now destroyed and or looking like shit compared to when I was a kid. I went to the Keys when I was a kid, and the water was like what you'd imagine you'd see in any blue tropical island, turquoise blue. Now when you go to the Keys, from what I've seen of it, it's kind of a murky greenish until you get out further from the beach. These are very real environmental damages that are happening in my lifetime. Oh yeah, the red tide happening all over the place. I remember red tide didn't really happen much when I was a kid, but I tried to go to the beach a couple years ago when I was in Florida, before COVID happened, and twice in a row had to cancel the trip because of red tide. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Republicans run that state, and despite the fact that it's ruining the environment and making the state worse to live in as a Floridian, their control of the state allows them to not only keep their ideological methods and their ideological goals in check, the don't say gay bill kind of stuff, and the banning of the CRT, which is really just teaching anything about the history of America that doesn't make it look completely whitewashed and pristine clean. They want to make sure that students are only ever being taught the myth of American history, because that's what, lack of education leads to more conservatives. I'm sorry, but it's true. Stats are there. Conservatives do rely on cutting off education to as many people as possible. The biggest issue that the right has right now is the fact that even if you do live in the inner city, you do still have access to some level of education, even though they've done a very good job of ensuring that a lot of young POC in America that are in schools and whatnot are not going to schools that are well funded. Despite that fact, people who live in suburbs and, in larger cities are still getting decent educations, thus resulting in them being more progressive because they learn, the truth about the world, which is very bad for the right. And so that's what they're doing right now. They're trying to fight to control the education system as much as possible right now.
I believe it's 58 on average say yes, they want Roe upheld. It's not as much as the left has 70% are pro-choice. Let's get to the nitty-gritty here. What's the actual numbers? No, it's 58%, but most people in this country, I believe we're looking at around 72%, believe there should be some restrictions on abortion. The challenge now is that you have to get one or the other. In blue states, they're removing all restrictions, and in red states, they're banning it outright, and moderates are just left in the middle. Somewhat in agreement with the right, because at the very least, the Republican argument here is...
Moderates are just left in the middle. I'm sorry. This is not an issue where it's oh, well, if you just disagree with the vote, then ignore it. This is an issue where if you are part of the impacted party, if this gets repealed, you're the one who experiences all of the negative impact. People who are on the opposite side of the issue, whether they're part of the, affected party or not, feel or have no change upon them. Their rights are not the ones being impacted. The people advocating against abortion were never going to get abortions. The people advocating for the freedom to choose, in some cases, are people who want to have that right. They're the ones who are going to have their rights taken away. This isn't oh, well, we lost on this one, time to move on to the next issue. This is a real issue of people's rights to their bodily autonomy here. You really are telling people here, and then what this is saying is the federal government very well may tell you that you do not have the right to do with your body as you please. This tells us that the government gets to say what you can and can't do with your body on a very fundamental level. It already does to the extent that, the government tells you can't do drugs and whatnot, but as far as like what you can do with your body's own natural processes, because that's what pregnancy and childbirth is. The government being able to intervene in that and tell you how you can do it and where and how and what way you can and can't do, that's going to be a pretty big precedent set for impeding on people's rights. And as I said before, I think a lot of people who maybe aren't super political but don't like those sort of steps, I think it's going to push them away from the right and more towards the left.
Blue states love abortion, red states won't. Blue state, the Democrat argument is no, abortion legal everywhere, regardless of what red state wants. Red states want. Okay, I better slow down. I want to make sure I get through all of the breaking news, show you what the left is saying. And yes, my friends, my argument is this could be a catalyst on par with slavery, leading to some...
Well, having some states that are red where abortion is illegal and some states that are blue where it is okay, I mean, sounds in theory like a perfectly fine solution, right? Hey, if you want to get an abortion, just go to a blue state where you can go one of those. Problem is, like, what if you live in Nebraska? Like, you gotta drive like a whole day or two to get to a state where you can get an abortion? I mean, that's not something everybody can do. Not everybody even has transportation like that. Many people don't even have the ability to go across state to get medical procedures done because of their schedule and their time and everything like that. I mean, you don't want to you want to have as little roadblocks and barriers in a functioning society as possible between the people and services they need. When you cut down on their ability to get those services, especially when it is a heavily politicized service like this that is specifically targeting a marginalized demographic, most people who are, dependent on abortions, if that is the way they're going to go, are women. It's pretty distinct what their intentions are. They hate women. They do. A lot of this is about controlling women. It is. The people saying it's about being pro-life and caring about, these are the same people who are in favor of the death penalty. All right. These are the same people who have watching pro-life conservatives interview the guy who killed Osama bin Laden and hyping him up on their podcasts and stuff is really fucking funny. All right. Like talking to him like he's some sort of Marvel superhero on their podcast. Just yeah, you guys are really pro-life, aren't you? They don't care about life. They don't have that all life is sacred philosophy. They wouldn't be in favor of the death penalty if they were. What's the death penalty do? Are these people at high risk of breaking out and offending again? Are we talking about fucking supervillains here? These people aren't breaking out and offending again. The best argument you can make in favor of the death penalty is that housing these prisoners for their whole lives is, costs a lot, but that doesn't even work out. When you look at the numbers, they spend more executing these prisoners than they do keeping them alive for their whole lives. It's literally just a matter of they feel really good when mostly POC criminals, or who they deem criminals, are executed. Or in many cases, it's like that one Republican politician who thankfully did not win in Mississippi, who said he wanted to bring the gas chamber back as a method of executing death row inmates, and he wanted to include grooming as a death row, offense, and he also wanted to include teaching children about LGBT as a death row offense, as grooming. And so essentially what he wanted to do is gas all of the pro-LGBT teachers, the LGBT teachers, anybody who would teach kids about the LGBT stuff, parents, whatever. That's what they want to do. Really fucked up shit. Their ideology is horrid. They will lie to your face about what they truly want and what they believe constantly. Pay attention to what they're actually doing, though. That's where their intentions truly are. Look at what they're actually doing.
Of civil war. Now, Stephen Marsh, as I mentioned, wrote the book, The Next Civil War. Even he is reluctant to say this is. He's saying it could lead to unrest. I definitely agree with that. But let's talk about possibilities after we talk about the news. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member if you would like to help support our work. Our journalists have been covering this from the moment the leak came out, compiling data on all these states, their laws, what will change. If you want to support our work, go to timcast.com. In the top right corner, click sign up.
All right. If he's already doing the Listen, there's no way the next 30 minutes of this video has any arguments or substance in it. If after the first 5 minutes he's already shilling and asking for money, that means we've gotten literally all of the substance of this video. He'll just be repeating the same points the next 30 minutes. I've seen Tim Pool videos before. The first 5 to 6 minutes are more or less all you really need to hear, and you know what you're gonna get. You know what? Speaking of, if you enjoyed this video, why not drop a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon if you're new here and you want to see more content from me. YouTube won't tell you when I go live, upload new content, anything like that, unless you hit that bell icon right next to the subscribe button and you know, hit the turn on all notifications. You got to do that for YouTube to even tell you. And of course, if you want to support me further, you can you know, follow my social media, link down below, or even support me financially by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub over my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or through Patreon. Any donations you do through that will contribute to this dono goal down here, and when we hit that $300 dono goal, I put on my Shadow the Hedgehog onesie and wear it for the whole rest of the stream. It's pretty funny. If you want to see that, consider supporting me. It also helps me pay the bills and, you know, buy food and stuff like that, and I do like eating. I do like not starving to death, so definitely consider tossing some buccarinos to your boy. Regardless, though, if you just watched the video, I really appreciate it. Liking the stream also helps a lot. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.